Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere, and even earn money. We like that. All in one place for totally free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your cellular telephone or your computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else, those other places that podcasts are heard.
Video podcasts are also available on Spotify, and when you want to take conversations with your fans to the next level, Q&As and polls are the best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free, zero catch. We've been using it ever since we started How Long Gone. And ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I feel like having the option of turning off the Q&As and the polls on the user dashboard has really helped boost my creativity and take it to another level. I highly recommend giving it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Oh, hi Chris, how are you?
Hey TJ, how are you?
Wonderful. You just caught me straight out of the shower. I'm putting a little Weed Sport balm on the back of my leg.
Shout out to the family at Weed Sport for sending me the pack. I passed the CBD rub to my mom, and I think she's going to use it. She might have already used it.
Yeah, my mom, I gave her some Weed Sport as well. She had a little arm injury like a year or half ago or something like that. And she claims that she put it on her arm and it did make the pain go away, but I don't 100% believe any mom that says she uses a marijuana-related product, even if it's topical and non-psychoactive.
Well, I'm going to check I'll check the container and see if...
You'll see if there's been a finger swipe into the balm, but that doesn't guarantee application. She could just do a pump and dump.
Yeah, maybe my dad just took a little numbie of it to see if it worked. You never know. No, I mean, she seemed pretty intrigued, but I also got the water bottle is really nice. I really fuck with the water bottle. It's a nice size for Barry's boot camp.
And when when you're telling your parents about this weed product and she seems genuinely curious, is it a real one or is it a mom curious of like, oh, all right, Jason?
No, because, my parents are...
They keep it 100 with you?
Well, my mom, unfortunately, part of her job is there's a lot of traveling, like driving in the car. So I think she does have aches and pains based on that schedule. So I think she's always... I bought them a foam roller. I've been here with a Theragun. This is just the final trifecta.
Well, I'm not doubting Mrs. Black's pain. I'm just more doubting her acceptance and excitement and lack of hesitation to use a marijuana-related product, topical or not.
Yeah. I was surprised too. I don't think she was also like, do you use it? And I was like, nah. So, I mean.
Right.
I was like, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to grasp if you're, somebody in your 60s and you're like, oh yeah, this is just made out of marijuana, a drug that's been illegal your whole life. And you just buy it at the store, you buy it at Urban Outfitters. And they're like, what in the fuck are you talking about?
She said this to me though. She was like, yes, but this is made out of the part that isn't. Like, doesn't get you fucked up, basically. So she knew that already. She had done her CBD research, thank God.
Okay,
I didn't have to mansplain CBD.
I saw it on one of my Substacks, Christopher.
Exactly. I saw this. I saw people talking about it. I subscribe to a guy that talks about this.
I'm all about cannabis innovation. This one, it's not cheap, Christopher, but it is a wealth of information. And with my profession, it is actually a write-off.
I think me and your father actually might have invested in this. We'll have to check with our VC guys.
Anyway.
I'm just dying. So, I went last and we'll move on. Just to hear your mom say flower in earnest is a new life goal of mine.
Me too, actually. I never thought about that until now. But I mean, we do have some breaking news to talk about.
Breaking for me too. I did not know about this.
Well, no, you do know about it. It's not actually breaking, but there was a video last night that I captured on, or that I saw on the dailymail.co.uk, the best website on the internet, and it featured Cannibal Army Hammer, and he was driving in a car with sunglasses on, and he was drinking a Miller High Life Tall Boy, and then the camera pans down and he licks a white substance out of his homie's hand.
He's off the moon rocks, clearly.
He's either off the moon rocks, the ketamine, or the classic Molly.
Just the classic Molly.
My man is unraveling, and I got to tell you, I'm fucking living for it. Like, I just think he's been rich and famous and good looking for too long, and he hit a breaking point.
Yeah, you mean like literally the point where you're not a hot guy anymore, and you're like, well, this fucking sucks. Because like, in his prime,
no, he's still hot.
He was, that was a nice hunk of man right there. But now,
no, he's still hot.
He lost it. He lost the swag sauce, if you ask me.
You're saying asking girls if you could eat their heart is going to take your swag away?
I'm saying that.
I disagree.
I'm basing this purely on physical appearance.
Looks.
He doesn't have. He's literally in the middle of a midlife crisis is what he's doing.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's accelerated, though, because of his age.
When I hit 40, I had a little bit of a fucking, I want to start eating a little blood, something like that,
Bro, that he's 34, first of all.
Yeah, what's the average life expectancy for him, 34 plus 34, that's 68. Like, if you told me that Winklevoss was going to die at 68 of a ketamine overdose, I'd be like, 100% sounds good to me.
Do not compare known hunk actor and heir to the Arm & Hammer fortune to a mere Winklevi.
Well, like, Chris, I was saying that because that was the character that he played in
oh yeah, I haven't seen that.
The Social Network. But I like that the pluralization of Winklevi. That was nice. But for example, like he plays the ultimate personification of Armie Hammer in that movie of, he's 6'4", 250 pounds of solid muscle, looks like an Abercrombie model, and is on the rowing team. And there's two of me. It's like, whose dick do I start sucking first?
You wish you were describing yourself and your twin, but unfortunately, that's not quite how I would say it.
My twin and myself, it's like, look, both of us, this is 350 pounds of weight between the two of us combined. That is combined.
It's combined. You do the math. I'm not going to say who's who here. You guys figure it out. You split it however you want.
Our bodies aren't perfect, and our schooling is incomplete, to say the least. but there are two of us.
I want to say that from now on. Did you drop out of high school? Well, my schooling is incomplete. If you ask for my transcripts, they will say whom. Mm-hmm. That's a funny way to put it.
There are a few inconsistencies on my record, sure.
But so Armie is unraveling, and he's been kicked off of a J-Lo movie that he was in.
Right.
So he's also getting divorced, and he has 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
the hairline is not seeding; it is reseeding. It's only going to get worse from here for him.
That's true. I mean, luckily he can go to Istanbul for the transplant. But yes, he
might have to go to Istanbul for legal extradition.
Yeah, he might need to go dry out. But Armie, apparently, I've heard some rumors from well-placed sources that Armie's been turning up for a while, all over the country. Just with this is firsthand. These are firsthand.
So when you
accounts.
say
this
turning up all over the country, you don't mean that he's being spotted and appearing in places all over the world like a Carmen Sandiego. You mean he's turning up in the sense that somebody would in the Little John style.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There could be a drop.
Not in like the British sense of it.
No, man. Okay. No. It's usually on this podcast whenever there's a British sentiment. It
has Armie turned up yet? I've seen him around.
Is Armie turned up backstage yet? You know what I mean? I got a little line for him right here. I want to get into a hole. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I saw that video. I mean, I know a couple people who, in my life who have probably enjoyed a Miller Lite out of a can while driving broad daylight. And
welcome to the South, baby. You did that 2 weeks ago.
None of their lives ended up working out exactly how they planned it to be. So for this person who is a, millionaire, famous stud muffin man who up until 48 hours ago could probably bed anyone he ever wanted to do that it's kind of sad. But also, if the guy really wants to drink people's blood and there are willing participants out there,
we're not going to kink shame him on this podcast.
Let my man cook.
That's not what we do here. We're a very inclusive show, and I would never do that to Big Army.
Especially for the skeletons in our closet, Chris. We can never kink shame.
No, that would be bad. I mean, the shit we do on this podcast is bad enough. I mean, just imagine. Are you sipping a bean, TJ? Did I hear a little slurp?
I'm sipping a nice cup of Laird calming superfood bean, and
Calming.
and then my LP picked up a nice Lassen smoothie too.
Damn, must be nice. Titty two beverages over here.
Yeah,
must
yeah,
be
yeah.
nice.
I'm doing a little bit what I call my fire and ice blend, and boy, does it satisfy.
God bless. That's great.
What are you sipping on over there? And also, I had to get the smoothie because it's literally in the 80s today, temperature-wise, and that's Fahrenheit. We're going to peak out at a high of 86 today.
It's very nice in Atlanta today. It feels fall-esque, 60 degrees, beautiful sunshine.
Wonderful.
I'm sipping a shot in the dark from Spiller Park, my local bean dispensary. Really hitting, and I've got some water as well. But you know what I was doing? Just quickly before we get to our guest, I was doing a little car shopping on the World Wide Web.
Oh, Carvana?
Not Carvana,
Okay.
Mercedes-Benz.com. Just lets you do some comparison shopping. But I'm talking to this lease broker later that you hooked me up with.
My lease
and,
guy. Also goes by the name of Chris, right?
Yeah, he's also named Chris, which I immediately trust him. So if he tries to rip me off, it'll just happen, because I'm down with other Chris's. So I'm just doing some comparing and contrasting on the Mercedes-Benz.com website with some different models and interiors. And as I do this, I'm just realizing, man, I really don't care about this shit. The fact to me that people would pay $1,500 more for some rims is mind blowing. And that's coming from a guy who has $1,000 shoes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying I won't spend that money somewhere, but for some reason, because when you go through the website, you pick all the upgrades and shit you want, and I'm like, no, I don't want any of this shit. I'm going to pay $400 for a light that shines the logo of Mercedes on the ground when I open the door. Who needs that?
Yeah,
that's stupid.
And when you go into a dealership, they will sort of shame you a little bit and make you seem like a beta bro for not doing that. Of like, oh, what? You're not going to get the freaking trim package? Like, what kind of fucking pussy are you? Are you trying to get laid?
That's why I'm using my dog Chris to hook me up with this lease, so I don't have to talk to any of these fucking mouth breathers.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how that goes. So, are you allowed to divulge some hot info, model numbers that were kicking the tires?
I'm leaning to the E350 sedan, just a simple four-door for a man on the go.
Yeah.
It can hold my tennis gear in the trunk. It's got a nice touch screen. I like the dashboard. And I'm sure a bunch of you fucking car dorks are going to be like, no, you should get the BMW. You should get that. Fuck off. Okay. Audis are for fucking losers. BMWs are for assistants at William Morris or CAA. Mercedes is the car for winners. Okay. And don't forget it. And and I'm not getting a G-Wagon either because I'm broke. Okay. So let's just get that out of the way too.
Yeah, but you wouldn't get one either. And even if you had the money.
No, G-Wagon's too much car for a guy.
That's a lot of whip. You can't just, you show up in your little grocery getter, E350. People are going to be like, cool guy, nice car, keep it moving, life is good. But
that's what I want.
The G-Wagon pulls up and everyone's going to be like, I can't wait to see who comes out of this thing.
Which Yeezys is this guy going to have on?
Exactly.
Yeah, but it does, though. What I would pay for when I'm thinking about talking to Chris about is maybe a panoramic sunroof.
Oh,
because I do like, when the LA sun is coming down. Unfortunately, I don't want my head to get sunburned, but I'm willing to risk it for that natural. I love now. I'm a hashtag natural light guy.
Yeah, and I know that you can't afford the Rolls Royce, so if you want to see stars,
I got to look up, baby. You already know.
On the ceiling, it has to be.
No, I ain't Meek Mill. The credit score ain't Wraith credit score. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, maybe I could just pay for the Wraith in cash, I guess, once we sell this podcast to Spotify.
Where you're coming from, you don't need any low interest APR financing. You drop
what the fuck is APR? Is APR is that jeans? What is that?
That's the Audemars Regular. That's what I call the presidential, the plain Jane.
Oh,
that's the Audemars Regular.
Okay, I like that. I forget that you can rhyme.
It's not as much of a showpiece, but the resale, it's just wise to do that.
We love that. I'm gonna hit Chrono 24 with that. Take a little flicky. You saw. Anyway, sorry, we could do this all day, but we do have a guest today, and it's actually an esteemed guest. Once again, a legacy persona. Sasha Frere-Jones is the former music critic at the New Yorker. He also worked at the Los Angeles Times as well as Genius in one of its mini stages.
The man has written pretty much everywhere.
He did a great profile of Lily Allen back in the day that I can't wait to ask him about. But I think that I think that it's interesting to talk to somebody who's like a true critic who left the New Yorker for a more modern pasture, only to kind of return to legacy media. As a person who loves legacy media, I want to hear all the romantic stories of that and what it was like back in the day. He also makes music, which I think is very interesting for a guy in the business. I always found that to be really odd if a manager played like an open mic night. Anyway, let's give him a jingle.
All right, we'll give him a call.
Officially, hello, I'm Sasha.
Hi.
Hey, Sasha, how are you? Nice to have you. How you feeling?
It's been, I guess we don't know each other, so there's no reason you would know this, but, sorry, this isn't going to be very funny at all. The mother of my kids, died last week, so...
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was a very quick 5-month cancer. I mean, a little bit expected, but I didn't know it was going to happen that quickly. So, we sat Shiva last week, but that's sort of where all of our heads are at. So I'm a little bit in a different space, but I'm okay. I'm okay today.
Okay. Is that something that you would like to avoid talking about or want to talk about?
Thank you for asking. The real answer is I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How could you? So you guys were separated then, I guess?
Yeah, we divorced in 2006, but we stayed very close. We have 2 kids, 20 and 23, John and Sam. Yeah, we were very, very close. Unfortunately, if people ask, how are you, that's kind of the answer.
Well, we appreciate your honesty.
I don't know how much you guys want to go into things like this, but, it is, she had, I guess what we do call a good death, in that it was very conscious. She was with my kids and her partner. She married actually her partner in September, I guess after the diagnosis. She got it on her birthday of all things. It was her 57th birthday, July 31st. And then she died on January 4th. So it was less than 6 months. But she was with the boys for all of lockdown. There's a house in Connecticut that they have. And so the lockdown was actually a blessing for them because, March? So they got 9, almost 10 months with their mom.
When you're in your early 20s, as a young boy running around with TikTok and all that, you're never going to hang out with your parents that long over the course of your entire life, probably.
No. And she was about to go traveling for the rest of her life. And she didn't want to marry her boyfriend because they're both divorced and didn't really want to get married. But after the diagnosis, they got married in September. It was and they actually got married in the exact same place that I married her in 1994, which was not something I had on my bingo card.
Yeah, that's actually really crazy, man. I mean, obviously this whole story is pretty crazy, but is that because that was a place that was very special to her?
Well, it's just the house. It's her family house in Connecticut. It's not very fancy at all, but it's a beautiful spot. It was an incredible wedding. And it was also sort of a memorial at the same time.
Man.
And it was I think it's the only distanced event I've done during the entire pandemic. But it was beautiful. She looked amazing. I'm talking to you and to whoever's listening, if we even keep this, but this is not somebody anyone knows, but she's one of the most important people in my life. And the idea of her dying was so completely beyond. I haven't processed it.
Well, I guess it's a beautiful thing that you're able to maintain such a close relationship after getting divorced.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, do you think, was that always the case, or was that a lot to do with like the co-parenting and it kept you close?
That's a good question. No, we made a very conscious decision we got married not because our marriage was bad, but because it had been good, and it started going a little bit bad, and we didn't want to be like other parents we'd seen, or maybe those who raised us, and there wasn't even that much acrimony, and I don't know. It seems to be unique in some way, but I don't think we thought about it that much. We just we didn't feel resentment. There's like this little angel now with us. Mm-hmm. The entire process was very intense for me, and it's a bit hard to talk about, but I can say a couple of things that I think maybe are useful to people who are, going through this or may go through it one day, is that,
please,
at the risk of sounding like a complete lunatic, that the way you live your life is definitely a check that gets cashed in a moment like this. So how principled and loving Deborah was all of that came true in this moment. And that so many people around her loved her, and she conducted herself in such an incredible way that, we didn't talk very much. She didn't really want to interact with a lot of people. So we had a couple of phone calls. The first one, and it was clear from the very first email she sent me, the only email she sent me, that she knew how bad it was. Like stage 4 pancreatic that's the ace of spades right there.
Yeah.
Turns out most doctors, if they get it, they just go right to palliative care. They don't even do the chemo. And she tried chemo for a couple of months, and it just made her feel like shit, and then she gave up. But there was so much love, and there was so much unity. You know, we had this conversation, and I said, you know, is there anything we need to talk about? Do we have any resentments? And she said, no, we're good. Which is what I thought, but I didn't know that for sure. And we sat Shiva over Zoom for a week, just last week, which was really beautiful. And hearing about someone you know, but hearing other people that you don't know talk about them, you know, in a part of their life where you haven't been around. Like, I haven't been with her day to day for almost 15 years, although we saw each other a lot. And hearing like her work friends talk about her, although they all made her sound like super noble. And, you know, my boys and I were both like, you know, she was like a person and she was funny. Like, she wasn't like Joan of Arc. Like, she was an amazing person, but everyone was like, she was so imposing and, you know, impressive. And we were like, yeah, that's true. But she was this very loving, goofy person too. And it also sort of, it interacted or coincided. There was a connection to my sobriety, which very much came up during the Shiva, because I got sober about 1.5 years ago. And my younger son, after the first night of Shiva, basically said like, well, I've never really said anything like this, but I'm really impressed you're sober. How did you stay sober this last week? And, you know, I'm glad that he felt that way. I mean, the honest answer is it wasn't that hard because my sobriety came after a lot of hard work. So it's pretty stable. But for about 15 minutes when I found out on Monday, I have to admit that I don't know that I was thinking about anything specific other than like...
Not feeling that?
Yeah, if you had a intravenous Valium, that would have been fine. I didn't need a tequila and a beer. But I definitely thought like, how can I not feel this?
That's an interesting aside on all this stuff, because I do think that it's I'm sober too, and that's definitely where your head goes in moments like that. It's like anything to escape it, I imagine.
The answer is actually it wasn't hard, and my sobriety has kept me going through this entire process. It's more like the hard part happened a while ago.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
It actually, I mean, if the honest answer, I didn't put it to him this way because it was a very sort of it was a text exchange, and it was really moving that he was saying something very loving and positive to me. And I guess the emphasis wasn't on how hard it was or wasn't, because it's very hard to explain to somebody who isn't sober what sobriety is like, because for me, it's this gift, and it's better than any drink I could take, which I know sounds a little bit, Jonestown, but I mean,
whatever works.
It's true. And so, I think, but I mean, his comment does make sense in the sort of larger context of like, wow, previous things that were awful, like you would have been drunk or high. And it's like, yeah, that's true.
I mean, were they aware of you partying, obviously, or was it just like, that's how dad is?
I mean, this is an unfolding story. I seem to be starting with all insanely personal shit, but that's fine. If I wake up and I hate the idea of all of it, I'll tell you.
You won't have much time. This is going up tomorrow.
Well, it's just interesting. I think for me, I just feel like most people I know that are sober or got sober are around my age or maybe even a little younger. You know what I mean? Like I'm 38, so most people are in their early 30s. I feel like that. So it's interesting. I know you're older than us, so I think that being able to be functioning for that long of a period is interesting to me as a bystander.
Yeah, also the nature of this thing. I've become what we call a CASAC. I'm a credentialed counselor. It coincided with COVID beginning, so I had a year of schooling, but I had exactly 2 weeks of having my job, and then COVID came. So I'm going to take my little certificate down to the Vax place tomorrow. Hopefully start working again. But
Daddy's essential.
In these journeys of recovery, like when you go through something like the first step, like your life has become unmanageable. In my story, I don't know exactly when that point is. It's not that I argue with the conception and I claim, oh no, I'm not an alcoholic. It's more like, well, things were very manageable and cool for a long time. Like my stuff all happened pretty late in life. So
were there triggers of that though, or was it just compounded?
I mean, it was more. I mean, I think there must have been, but in these stories, and I'm sure you have the same for yourself. Like the most honest answer is I don't know. I don't know. When I think about myself shoplifting when I was 11 years old, that felt pretty alcoholic.
Sure.
It's a very alcoholic story, and it had the same kind of feeling. So, I know when things got worse, and, it's a progressive disease. So it's, the last 10 years are mostly when I was a little bit sort of coming apart in the atmosphere. Like, that's sort of what it felt like when it was bad, but
So you were a tequila man? Is that what you're saying?
like anyone, like anything, anything was good. But at the end,
Whatever's wet.
tequila and beer seemed to be my, I mean, whatever it would be very sort of specific at the time. So it was like white wine for a year or two. Then it was like vodka gimlets for a while. And then it was, then it became just shots of tequila with pints of beer combo. A beer back. Although it's kind of weird to call something a beer back when it's a pint of beer. Like that's not.
That does
Not when you're an alcoholic.
Yeah, it doesn't
pretty
roll
damn
off the
good.
tongue, but I understand. We know exactly what you mean by that. Do you think that your choice of career kind of allowed for this in some ways because of the atmosphere and the environments you're in, or do you think maybe you were drawn to it because of that?
Absolutely, I don't. I mean, here's a funny thing, and I'm still unpacking all of this. I don't say peeling the onion because I hate that phrase, but. Or more will be revealed because I don't like that phrase either. But
It can be a bulb of fennel instead.
exactly. I'm still sautéing these onions. Like when I started touring with bands much younger, and those are situations
As a musician before
when I was a teenager,
yeah,
right? And through my 20s and through my 30s into my early 40s, like. And, you drink a shitload of beer when you're touring, but all of that felt, and I know this sounds a bit funny and it sounds like a rationalization. I'm just talking about what feels manageable and, not manageable. And that just felt like business, like work. We drink during sound check, never drank before going on. We drink afterwards, maybe. That was completely different. But then, yes, in these professional settings where there's just all of this downtime and people are buying you drinks, like that definitely. And there's also all this weird ego stuff that absolutely ignites the alcoholic tendencies, and your self-will goes bananas, or mine did. And so that felt much more perilous to me than being on tour, where it all sort of blended into this kind of physical ritual of like lifting stuff, having a beer, going on stage. Like it was all that was all very controlled and like we had a primary purpose as a band. So like I absolutely never was in any position to let any of that go nuts, so it felt different. It's weird because in that situation there was equally unending amounts of alcohol, but I never wanted to go on stage anything other than top shape. So they're somehow different worlds.
After lugging the Ampeg up 4 flights, you know what I mean? You have to reward yourself with a Modelo.
Also, spoken like a true shredder, there's certain intricacies that you are shredding that cannot be done with an inhibited mind.
Gotta shred. Yeah, the SVT2 Pro is a very unforgiving amplifier.
It's the curse of all bass players everywhere.
It is the heaviest fucking thing I've ever owned, and I'm kind of glad that it's gone now, because I sold all my gear after we did Primavera in 2010. I sold it all. Now I'm in a band that's just actually put out a record and I don't have any gear, which is kind of a problem, but I guess not a problem right now, is it?
I used to manage bands, and it was always impressive to me when I would be getting fucked up with these guys, and then they would go on stage and play for 2 hours or an hour and a half, and I'd be like, I couldn't do that. Like I could not play drums for an hour and a half blackout drunk after doing cocaine. I just couldn't. I don't think I have it in me. But then I realized that for a lot of musicians, I think it's like muscle memory, and you also, like you said, the ego. You get that recognition and the rush of adrenaline when you're on stage, and maybe it helps you focus. But I was always blown away by that capability.
Yeah, just the demands of being on stage. I never found that I had really time to think about anything other than just simply playing the songs properly. And, I'd have a beer or two before going on, but I didn't want to be embarrassed. And the adrenaline would I have more memories of having the flu when we were playing sometimes, and how the adrenaline would get me through a show, and then after the show I'd collapse. So I don't know how people play particularly impaired. I never really tried it, and I never wanted to know, because
Sounds like Chris is jealous and you're not so much.
I just more like, you don't get paid any money, so why the fuck would you screw up your 90 minutes on stage? Like
all you have? Yeah.
It didn't seem like, if I was going to get messed up, that did not seem to be the place to do it.
I think you have the better approach. I think I would agree, but I just always found that. But it's a very divided thing. Like people either do it that way or they do it your way. There's not really like a real gray area.
And some people also, the nature of what they're doing, like Ozzy could be Ozzy and be out of his mind, but yeah, I couldn't play the kind of music I've been involved in and be anything other than sort of on my game. Although I've played with incredible people, I guess getting stoned is differently. I never really got stoned very much, but there are incredible musicians who seem to smoke pot and play perfectly well. I don't really know how they do that. But.
Always been envious of that.
Yeah, I don't get that one either. But I think it's all, like I said, I think it's all just practice, to be honest.
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, I think it's called practice.
Most of it is about vibes as well.
Also vibes, very important part of the equation. So you've been a musician for a very long time. You toured music for a very long time. You've also been a critic of music for a very long time. And you know, when Jason and I were talking about having you on, I find that dynamic to be pretty strange in like a rare air kind of way. Like I don't know anybody else that's done those simultaneously. Maybe that's me just missing it, but I feel like that's a position that you hold exclusively.
There's been I feel like every critic has been in some.
But I mean, like actively touring while also being
true.
a critic at the New Yorker is a very different level than like I write for a blog.
Right. At that, when I was on staff with them, I didn't.
You didn't tour at all.
No, we did. Well, we played the one show in Primavera in 2010. I made one record in 2005 that never came out, and I think I put out a single. I did that Pylon cover in 2011, but mostly there was barely any music making going on because I couldn't do those two things at the same time. In the last year, actually, there's been more activity than there's been in a hell of a long time. I put out one record by myself and one record with the band, and this new band I'm incredibly excited about. So the last year is maybe the only time where I actually was kind of fully doing both. Although no, that's not true. In the 90s, I was doing both, but I didn't have a staff position, so it wasn't that hard to, although there was a period, I just remember this because I finished this memoir for Deborah. She asked me to do it, and I did it, and I printed it, and she read it.
I'm sorry, your memoir?
Yeah, I wrote a book about myself, a memoir, and I finished it for her because she didn't really want anything, but she at one point, I finally was like, I was just dying to be helpful, and I was like, do you want me to write you something? And she said, yeah, finish that book that I've been asking you to write forever. So I finished it. I can show you the cover later. I forgot what we were talking about, playing music. And there was a point when I went on tour. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It was not it was not a particularly impressive piece of writing even when I was doing it, but we had to tour in like 99, and my friend like wrote one or two of my columns. I think he even wrote one that had my name on it. It's not something you're going to find. It's not like the stuff I did for Spin or The Voice.
That's really funny.
It was it was weird. Yeah, so that was one of the things.
So anyone could do it, huh?
Well, no, that's one of the things that made me exactly. That is what I'm saying, actually. Yeah,
that's why I've got a new job now, Chris. That's the whole point.
Especially for a not particularly. I'm not going to talk about that, but anyway,
there's a lot that could be said about what happened at Woodstock '99. I'm sure whoever wrote that article for you did a great job. So what's it like? What's it like writing a memoir?
Well, I was under contract to do it for a long time, and I didn't do it for a bunch of psychological reasons that I think had to do with I don't really fucking know. But when Deborah said, "Hey, I want this thing," kind of all of the lights went on. My friends around me were incredible. My friend David Grubbs hooked me up with a designer who went pro bono. We found a good printer. I printed up about 10 of them. And I somehow finished it. And saying that there was sort of a fire under my ass is that's putting it mildly. Like the word deadline was sort of morbidly accurate. So I just had to fucking do it. And I didn't. And a bunch of my friends helped me edit it. But it went very, very, very quickly, and a lot of it I didn't even read twice. I just showed it to people. We fixed the typos, gave it to the printer, and she got it, and she read it right around Christmas, and that was that. And that was its primary purpose. It'll find its way into the world at some point, but it was really for her. So
that's incredible. That's incredible to me. That I feel like that's one of the hardest things to do, but I do think that it was just the circumstances. It fell out of you.
I had a lot of shame around not finishing a book, so it felt like a gift that she gave me. I mean, she was asking me to do something for her, but really it was a gift to me to give me a reason, and now I finished one, and it was actually incredibly fun, despite, the obvious sort of context is not fun, but having that much control over this big sort of loose thing that I could move around and make what I wanted. And, I had this thing with me for a couple of years, and I really didn't like it at all. And when I really had to look at it, it's a little bit like sobriety. When I had to look at it and be like, this is just terrible. This is terrible. this is okay. And once I found the voice of it, it became incredibly satisfying, which is going to help me finish the other 2 books. So that was such a mitzvah she did for me by saying, you have to do this thing. And I knew I had to do it. And I did it, and it was fun, and I loved it. And I have an idea of what it feels like to write a book now. But a lot of my resistance had to do with not looking at material that I knew wasn't very good. And then and that's sort of a luxury to be like, oh, I suck. Like that kind of self-criticism was not something I had time for. So I had to just fucking look at it and get it done. And I did. And once you've sort of broken that barrier once with anything you do, whether it's, getting sober or learning how to play a Led Zeppelin song or whatever, it's not that scary anymore.
It's amazing the people that we bring into our lives, our partners and, girlfriends, wives, whatever it is, the way that they do that exact thing that you need to be done and you can't do it and you've tried your whole life and they just like, oh, just do this. And the whole world just kind of stops. And it's amazing that we meet those people who can push that button in us.
That it's really true that Deborah was incredible in that way, how supportive she was, I think this is in the book, but she was, very supportive of my writing. And there's actually an interesting story there. I need to give her credit for something. And she loved the band, but I made a film back in 86 when I was at college. And for some reason I hadn't shown it to her. So somewhere in the middle of the 90s, I was finally like, oh, I have this VHS. I want you to see this movie I made. And it was one of the first times she looked at it and was like, yeah. And she was like, that's not it. That's Chief. That is not it. And because she was
that ain't it, Chief.
It was not. And because she was so fair and never did anything for either good or bad effect, she would never neg you for some reason, and she wouldn't, puff you up if you didn't deserve it. I took that very, very seriously. I was like, oh wow, this film is really not good. And and it's neither, it's not a big deal. It's not like I make films. But she was incredibly supportive of the band and of the writing, and the New Yorker job in many ways is thanks to her, because what happened was it would have been 2002 or 3, and Nick Hornby, sorry, my man, was writing the pop column for a minute, and I just couldn't fucking handle it because he seemed to hate popular music. He was basically like, I don't like this Beyonce person, but hey, Los Lobos, they're great. And I was like, fuck, dude. I think that's...
Sounds like my kind of cat.
That's actually a pretty accurate description of what he was writing, and I was like, fuck this shit. And one day I actually he wrote a column about the top 10, and I threw the fucking magazine across the room. And Deborah was like, well, why don't you just write to them and say hey. And so I wrote to them a letter that I didn't think was exactly an audition. I was more saying your magazine seems pretty good, Mr. Remnick. You're pretty good at all the other things.
I like your little rag, bro. Let me help you out.
But I was like, you really, you don't have, what I said, I think, if I remember, was, you wouldn't have someone who was covering the Iraq War come back and say, you know what, I'm more of a, Spanish Civil War guy. I can't really do this war. But I was like, you have a pop critic who basically doesn't like popular music. So, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, I can give you some names. And I remember very clearly that I got back, I figured out the email sort of format, and I got back a thank you. And I was like, that's weird. And then a year, maybe more than a year later, right around my birthday, 2004, I got a call, and he was like, would you like to come in? And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, I completely forgot, and I'd even written the letter. I was like, what are you talking about? And that was that.
Come in for what?
It was Deborah who said, also when we did the collaboration with Stereolab, I was listening to this Brian Eno song, and I was like, oh man, I want to hear Letitia sing this. And she's like, why don't you just ask them? And she was really good at being you just do the thing. It's not that big a deal. Mm-hmm. And I've really carried that forward in my life. She was so good at just doing things but right on the point, not super pumped up or super, dramatically self-doubting or anything. She would just be like, well, just do the thing. Just get on with
just
it.
Just in a way that is so simple, but it just smacks you across the face of oh God, of course.
And she was something else.
Well, hopefully you're able to, pass that on and do that for other people who feel, who are almost there. They just need that last little puzzle piece to connect it all together.
That certainly comes up in the work that I do in recovery with people. But as far as a family, there's my 2 boys and me, and then there's our, our partners. But I think we do feel this very, I don't know what to call it without sounding like a total cornball, but it's something like a sense of mission. I just want to do shit that would be, or like would line up with things that she would do or would want to do, because, you know, the things that she supported, she had that unerring quality, even if it was something that she didn't understand. It's not like she loved like drum and bass or some shit, but I could play her an Ooey record and have her be like, yeah, that's good. Or like, that one's not so good. Like, don't put that one on. She somehow could figure shit out in a very unpretentious, simple way. She was about it, as the children say. She was about it.
Yeah, I guess, you know, people like you, or, I mean, I feel like I'm the same way, you know, who might be, you know, stumble over their own thoughts in their head, or they might be overthinking things too much. You know, we need those people in our lives to just kind of hone in that frequency into something that's very clear.
And it's a certain kind of selflessness, too, because let's say you have a loved one who does something you don't care about or even know that much about. Like, somebody really wants to be a florist. I mean, I love flowers, so that's a bad example, but I don't know anything about being a florist. And she was the kind of person who would absolutely support you in being a florist. Even, I mean, that's a bad example because we all love flowers, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like she wanted me to do the thing that was on.
Let's say you got really into golf.
Much better example. She would have tolerated that, maybe. But I think if it made me really happy, she would have. I mean, like, our older son, Sam, is like an incredible skier. That was something that we had to get somebody outside the family to come in and be like, will you take the kids on a ski vacation? Because, like, I don't fucking know how to ski. You know, it's that Brooklyn life. Like, no skiing. You could sort of can ski in Fort Greene Park. I did take my sled down there one day in the late 70s and, like, fly off the fucking edge. And I loved it.
I don't know if that counts as skiing.
It felt very much like skiing. I landed on a car. It was very dramatic. It was one of the massive, massive blizzards in the mid to late 70s. And there were just like, you couldn't see anything. It just became this one long slope. But then at the end, there was unfortunately a car. So sorry, guy. I ran. I was like, oh, I heard the metal on metal. And I was like, nope.
Well, I mean, they don't build cars like they used to back in the 70s, so I'm sure that station wagon was A-okay, not a dent on it.
Actually, good point.
What are the other two books that you mentioned?
Oh, there's one is a music writing book that I've been working on for a long time. My publisher is very long-suffering. My editor. I mean, I think my editor
that's kind of the thing with publishers in general. They're, you know, and editors. That's part of the job description.
I think my editor, when I gave him this book, was just sort of like, okay, this is one of the 3 books we've discussed. Great.
Cool. Thanks.
It wasn't the one he was expecting, which is the music book, which is, it's kind of me like crunching all of the writing into a new thing. It's not really a collection. It's more like, I changed how I thought about things, and I said, okay, well, there's some tendencies I've seen. I don't have a definitive take on anything or any person, but I think there are these things that have happened repeatedly, and I think it would make sense to crunch everything up. And I wrote 2 or 3 new essays, and now I'm just stripping it out and turning it into this different. It's sort of like sampling your old cat. It's like going back and just taking bits and pieces out of things. And again, some of that same quality of going back and being like, oh my God, I can't stand this piece. But like, if there's one good line in it, you know, like the one good drum beat, it's fine. And I just tossed it.
What are those consistencies that you are finding in this old work?
Yeah. Do you mean like trends or things you see repeating over history as you're writing about them?
What's an example? Well, the piece that I'm finishing now that I hope will be out somewhere soon, it's a process I call flickering. And it's what I see in the last 20 years of music. And it has to do with auto-tune and multitasking and switching between 2 states. And
okay.
So I found everything that I thought went with that, like James Blake, Frank Ocean, auto-tune, some other stuff. And that's one little stripe. And then there's like 20 or 30 other. They all have really stupid names like Crunchers and Feathers. And
no, I like that.
I made it intentionally stupid. But the stuff that fits into these processes, because I just changed the way I saw looking at movements and periodization. So I looked at a lot of my old work and just didn't fucking like it. I mean, that's one place I started, was like, I don't want to reprint this shit. Also, a lot of it's on the internet, so it feels dishonest to say to somebody, hey, give me $21 for this collection of shit you could have printed at home. Like, that's not eating. And then the third one is a novel, which I did not expect to ever write, but a friend of mine asked me to be part of a writing group a couple of years ago. And I said, okay, well, what's the idea? And she said, well, you know, we're all writers, but do something that's not your day job. Like it has to be something completely different. You can't bring in some book review and workshop it. So out of nowhere, I just came up with these 3 or 4 people who lived in New York, and then it developed into this sort of, there was a crime novel I tried to write once, and I put that in there, and there's a whole lot of stuff in rehab, and it's about New York and people who kind of lose their minds, and then in the third section, they're given these very suspicious, weird, not very legitimate jobs. So it's sort of like, and it's written in like a whole bunch of different voices, and that's the thing I've enjoyed writing the most, but, you know, it's definitely not something that anyone asked for, so I don't really know what to do with it.
Hey, what novel is?
Yeah, exactly. Who really wants to read anyone's novel?
I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but like your your motivational techniques, how do you get into the mindset of sitting down and writing for a number of hours?
Oh, I don't have any technique at all. I hate it. I never want to do any of it.
What do you? Well, are you a Google Docs daddy? Are you doing longhand on the legal pad? Like what are the tools? Maybe
I have a bunch of super, like, I get these weird chemistry notebooks, which are very cheap and very beautifully durable, and then do a lot of writing longhand. They're more bits and pieces.
Are those lined pages or no?
Yeah, they're lined. And then, yeah, I'm a Google Docs person, so when I finally do it, I do it in like pretty quickly in a couple of sessions. But I mean, because it's been putting money, like putting food on the table and paying the rent for so long, it doesn't feel like particularly special one way or the other. It's more like almost any other writer. I'm like, well, you know, the deadline's coming up. I mean, in sobriety, I'm pretty good with deadlines. I think before I wasn't very good.
Well, the deadline's coming up, so guess I got to sit down and do this shit now.
I think the difference is like in non-sobriety, I was probably like, well, I have half an hour before it's due, and I can probably get away with handing it in 2 days late. Let me do that. And now, like a couple of days before it's due, I
feel seen.
I dig in, and if it's a book, I have to start reading it right away. So the book reviews tend to actually be more on time because there's absolutely no way to get those wrong. Like I have to put in the work. And now, you know, I enjoy the work. I've always enjoyed the work, but I enjoy it in a less tortured way now. So I'm always giving myself a hard time and wishing that I could work more efficiently and harder. So like, I've never been satisfied with how much I work. I'm always like, God, you only wrote for like 30 minutes today. What's wrong with you? So like, I don't have any feeling of pride in the process or anything.
That makes all of us feel better. Thank you.
The finishing the memoir was very, very different from almost everything I've done. That was like, I liked being in that document. I did it for hours at a time. It had a total, because it was not for pay. Like it wasn't for anyone other than myself and for Deborah. So that it felt more like
and it'd probably been a long time since you'd done something that wasn't for pay, that was truly like, I just want to do this, so I'm going to do it. When it becomes your job, it's hard to do that.
I can't remember, but like, you know, that's another thing she gave me. She reminded me like music, because music has always been that way. It's always been the inverse. Never had anything to do with money. It was never for anybody but the band and ourselves, which is how the Body Meta record was done. And like, I've always enjoyed it. So having writing be that pleasurable was actually sort of disorienting, because I was like, wow, you can actually fucking enjoy writing. I had no idea. I'd forgotten.
especially in your sobriety, you know, we need to chase those highs as much as we can. And I'm sure the high you experienced from, you know, hitting the end on this memoir was better than any fistful of Oxycontins that Chris has ever taken, right?
That was not my drug of choice, but yeah, it actually it reminded me of being.
Don't shame me, okay? Don't shame me. We
I'm
all
not
make our
shaming
choices,
you at all.
okay?
I'm just
kidding.
I'm disambiguating. No shame at all. Just disambiguating.
Disambiguating. Damn.
Remember that.
Don't go over our pay grade, okay? Disambiguating. Our listeners don't know what that word means. You guys can pause and look that up now.
Yeah, I was just being clear there. It reminded me sort of writing when I was a teenager. Actually, I had a really, really intense flashback to being 15 and writing my play on a typewriter in my room, and how much fun that was. And that had not come into my head for so fucking long. I didn't expect the circumstances with Deborah's illness meant that everything felt completely heightened and weird, and like, and I also was thinking it's so recent, the death, that like, I'm just sort of, you know, I'm just getting back to my assignments. I'm actually having a really hard time writing. And, And like without the sort of the momentum of this thing, all of a sudden I was like, shit, maybe I won't be able to write another book. Like maybe without the intensity of this reality, like I just, I'll like fall apart and I'll be totally lame or some shit.
Now you know what it feels like to finish it.
Yeah.
You've done the thing. It's like when, Tony Hawk does the 900. Once you see that it can be done, just do it again.
Isn't it funny how Tony Hawk became such a or how other people like say Danny DeVito, or like Paul Stanley from Kiss, like they become these super wholesome, like widely beloved people. And like 20 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to pick like, okay, who are the people who everyone will uncomplicatedly love? Like Paul Stanley is amazing on Twitter. He's just like, I'm going biking again. And I'm like, you go, Paul. Go biking, Paul.
I guess in contrast to Gene Simmons, it bumps him up a few extra points as well.
He says lots of really lovely things. I just like you don't ever know who's going to like come back around and seem like, oh man, I love that person, or like Dionne Warwick, I love her.
Yeah, definitely could not have called that one. I agree with Tony Hawk though. He is pretty much beloved across the board.
Yeah, you can't be mad at who doesn't like Tony.
I'm just saying, you have completed a Tony Hawk style maneuver. You have the footage of it, and that should be enough motivation.
Oh yeah, hold on, let me show you.
You got the footy.
So you know that I'm not fucking faking the funk here, but here it is.
Oh yeah,
amazing. So you had them printed properly with a cover and everything, and you gave these to your friends as well?
No, they just went to the boys and to Deborah and to, I guess, one or two other people. Yeah, I mean, I want to keep the cover for the one that goes into the world, but also like, I don't know what to do now. It could be twice as long. It could be, I don't know. So I'm hoping.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you want it? Is the publisher? Is this going to come out for public consumption? Is that the plan?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I'm waiting for people, the people who have that power to weigh in on it, and the moment it went off, I stopped thinking about it and looking at it. So I don't, I've gotten a lot of feedback that helped, and people seem to be they liked it more than I expected. Yeah, I don't know. At the very least, I was going to say if I get hit by a car, but that's how actually Deborah's mother was killed a year before that. Anyway, I was going to say if I get hit by a car, I have at least finished one small book. So there we go.
So now you can start living the second half of your life on the back nine.
LP2.
LP2, and then we'll be able to write.
It does feel very much like
part due.
It feels like everything is sort of restarted. I had this thought the other day that like Jesus is like being reborn was like sobriety.
BC and AD for you.
Yeah, I mean, everything feels corny when I say it like that, but
I'm a corny guy.
That's not what Easter was really about, I don't think, but but like I'm not sure that it's not about that, if you know what I mean.
No, he moved the fucking rock. It's no joke, man.
Exactly.
He walked again.
I got to say, as much as this, I didn't expect to talk about heavy things. I'm incredibly glad that you haven't asked me either A, what I'm listening to, or B, like, so where's music going? Which is like for fucking like for 10 years, every time I'd show up for like some kind of public radio thing, hoping we were going to talk about something of value. It was always a sort of like business tech improvement talk, like what's next for streaming? And it's like, A, nobody knows. B, who the fuck cares? And like
Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal, they're duking it out right now. Who do you think's going to come out in Q1?
No, we were going to do a lightning round just to see how you felt about, the Lemonheads and Dua Lipa, but we'll save that for round 2. You know what I mean? It's fine.
I don't barely know anything about the Lemonheads. I somehow avoided them the whole time.
Well, I'll send you some links when we finish this show about It's a Shame About Ray, it's one of my favorite albums of all time, but I didn't get to live through it. You know what I mean? In a way that I...
No, I'd love to get a lot of anything that came out when I was very much operating in a band, which is sort of from 86 to 2003. Like a lot of things were filtered through like, what are we doing in the band? And like, who are we working with? So people who were like kind of in somebody else's backyard, I completely missed entire bands, like top to bottom. Like I don't think I've heard more than like 5 Pearl Jam songs.
That's hard to do.
Well, I guess I didn't like them, so I didn't want to, but there are a lot of bands that I thought I didn't like. And there are a lot of people I went back to and I was like, oh man, this band is sick. Like people, I didn't pay very much attention to the Cocteau Twins, for instance. And then I had so many friends who loved them. Or actually a big one is Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, who I ended up just worshiping, but I'm old enough that I was like, man, Birthday Party was great. Like the Bad Seeds suck. So like I checked out in 1987. And then, enough people were like, you should come back. And they were right. And, he's delightful.
He was able to top Release the Bats after all.
Yes, he was. Oh man, Release the Bats is such a great song.
I've
I
definitely
listened
been
to a
wasting
lot of
for that
Nick
song.
Cave. Nick Cave, yeah, like Nick Cave, like when I in like my early 20s, everyone I knew was super into Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. It was like cool to like that.
Especially when I was trying to have sex with goth chick.
That's the main takeaway of that for sure. But
do you guys read the Red Hand Files, his little newsletter?
I've read a couple of them. I mean, it's pretty cool what he's doing.
Yeah, I really like.
Why is his hand so red?
I don't know. I think that maybe that's the Peaky Blinders song that they. Whoa.
Tell me it's not blood.
Hand. I don't know why his hand is red. That's a good question. You guys, have you guys seen that German TV show where they play Junkyard Birthday Party?
No.
Maybe
It's really old, and they're all standing on their own little platforms. It's one
That's
of the
so cool.
It's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in my life because everyone is in their sort of idiosyncratic, like glory. Like Tracy, the bass player, has his cowboy hat, and Roland is like twisting around. They all look. They got that hair, and
that hair.
I need to watch that. I go into deep television performance holes on YouTube.
I think if you just say Junkyard Live German TV, you'll find it. It's so, oh my God, it's so great. And that's why I couldn't deal with the Bad Seeds, because I was like, how could you leave the Birthday Party? You were in the greatest band ever. Like, how am I supposed to fucking listen to this Bad Seeds Elvis bullshit?
Okay, it's similar to the Morrissey and the Smiths then?
Yeah.
I didn't find I loved the Smiths, but Morrissey, the contentious, like, sword swinger, like, I just didn't, I wasn't mad at him, I just didn't want to have to deal with it. And without that guitar playing, I didn't really care.
That's a cool way to say you're not into something. I just didn't want to deal with it.
It's true. I mean, he's fascinating, but I mean, those first few albums were just so remarkable that but I'm sure that's a good example of like what there must be like 19 Morrissey records. I'm sure somebody
there's a lot. There's too many.
I bet there's like a mid-period one that's amazing, and if I sat down, I'd be like, oh man, I fuck with this. There's only so much time.
Cool that there's enough that you can just spin the wheel and just throw a dart at any old Morrissey album, and there'll be one song on there that floors you every time.
It would be fun to find the one really good Morrissey solo record. Not a thing I've really ever thought about, but maybe. It'll
have to be a compilation.
We'll take this offline. Yeah, it'll be Morrissey the singles is probably what you're going to be looking for.
Well, speaking of music, do you have any experience DJing, Sasha?
I make mixes which I post on Mixcloud, and people have asked me since I sort of started making music to DJ. So like I show up and I get paid to play music sometimes, but I have I select things. I'm a selector. I'm not.
What do you use to DJ?
When I did some stuff in LA, I started using Tractor.
Okay.
And I'm pretty happy using Tractor, but I don't have any skills beyond just like being able to choose songs I like. And I really love doing it, but like I love making these mixes, and I can I can beat match, but that's because the software is doing it for me. Like that's not a skill.
So you're using Tractor to make these mixes.
Yeah, I just put up 5, I think, for 2020, and it was really fun to make them. I mean, they're lots of weird instrumental music. Like it's not like my Spotify playlist has all the fun stuff like the Dua Lipa. The mixes I made are all what we call murder spa.
For the heads.
Like spooky, quiet, beautiful, like dying refrigerators and shit.
Okay.
Wow, really sold me on that. Yeah.
Something that I can meditate to.
Yeah, or they become.
Look out the window.
I started taking out the really ridiculously noisy things because nobody really wants to hear that. So, no, they're very friendly mixes. They're good. You'd like them. But the disco tunes, all the fun stuff is on the Spotify one because I wanted to make them. It's totally annoying to be to prove to someone like, oh my God, this is my favorite Morton Feldman, and then play the Dua Lipa because like what's the point of that? I don't want to do. I'm not going to do that to you. That's silly.
Yeah, I've always felt that if you're going to have a mixtape, I want it to be a theme.
You got a vibe.
Theme and a mood of like, I want to put this on when I'm going for a run. I want to put this on when I'm cooking pasta for dinner for my friend. I don't want a Mersbo curveball.
Exactly. I think it's legitimate to like establish a vibe and then stick with it for 45 minutes. Cause I mean, that's what I want. You know, if I'm starting with a Scott Walker vibe, I want to stay there. And if I start with a Dua Lipa vibe, I want to stay there. That was my favorite. That was definitely my favorite pop song of the year. I don't think anyone came close to that tune.
Which song?
Don't Start Now. That was.
It's no Electricity or One Kiss, but it is a nice offering from Dua.
What's that?
I said it's no Electricity or One Kiss by Dua Lipa, but it is a nice offering.
Okay.
he said, okay.
Sasha, do not agree to disagree with me. That is just fact.
I
just don't know those songs as well, so.
Oh, okay.
One Kiss was an anthem. Have you ever been to a grocery store?
I know them. I don't know them as well. See, Don't Start Now is one of those songs that I've listened. Like, if there was a play count, Spotify doesn't seem to have one, but if you,
thank God,
my Don't Start Now play count is like 319 or something. Like, when I really fall in love with a song, like it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes.
I do the same thing. I listen to things over and over and over for a period of time.
So I've neglected a lot of other songs because I just,
I think Sasha knows what his homework is this afternoon, doesn't
exactly.
he?
It's it's One Kiss and what was the other one? Electricity.
That's right.
I'm there.
If you're into anthems, how do you listen to music nowadays?
In Quar, in Covey.
Do not say Covey on this podcast.
Covey.
You're a Spotify guy through the Sonos, vinyl through the hi-fi.
I don't like to get into the Spotify as bad arguments because the record business has always been a bunch of criminals. So there's nothing interesting to me about the Spotify argument.
Agree. Payola's been happening since the dawn of time.
Well, also just like it is actually a separate argument because it's about like signing stupid contracts and getting into situations where I think the musicians are much more complicit with their own exploitation than they want to talk about.
Absolutely.
I love musicians. I've spent my entire life with them and I love them to pieces. They're much more honest and loving than say writers. But they do tend to like whine like way too fucking much for my, but yeah, I'll listen to, we have a little stereo here. I'll sit here all the time and play whatever the fuck through the stereo. I got iTunes. I have Spotify. I have Kobooz. You guys fuck with Kobooz?
What the fuck is that?
Excuse me? What is that?
That sounds like a new non-alcoholic aperitif.
It does. It's really a bad name, isn't it? Kobooz. I don't know why it's called that.
Terrible.
It's just a high-res streaming service. It sounds nice. Yeah, I don't have any particular.
So it's title. Is it Tidal without Jay-Z? Is that what you're saying?
I guess it is, and it does. It sounds good. I don't have any. I'll listen to YouTube. I don't care. I don't have any strong. Spotify is fun because you can make these long lists and you can sort of keep track of what you're into. But I have tons of stuff in my Apple, my whatever. What is it called now? Music.
Yeah, just music.
Used to be iTunes.
I said I miss iTunes back when iTunes was iTunes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they got to stop changing the names of things. Oh my God.
I want to talk about your Substack. How are you liking life as a stacker?
Subby.
I love my Substack. I wish I could remember how
to log in.
How to log in. Because I've been doing like blogs of some kind since like 2003. I can't remember how the conversation went, but I was sort of like trying to figure out how to do it in a slightly more organized way. And then I ended up meeting the guy, Hamish, who started it. And I just thought he was nice. And I started one and I love doing it. But it's weird now that there are these articles about Substack as if it were like a thing with a culture and if it were different from X, Y, and Z. And I think like, it just reminds me of like, you wouldn't read an article about like, here's RCA Records, but like, that's what it is to me. It's just like, in the same way that I love Bandcamp, but like some other service could do it as well or better. I don't know. Like I like the Substack guys. It's been a really good experience for me. I'd like them to make it, because I don't have a paywall. I wish that people could call when they pay, I'd rather call it a donation than a subscription, because anyone can subscribe. Anyone can get all the writing and shit, but like the money is.
So you have nothing behind the paywall?
No, there's nothing other than like, I sent somebody a subscribers got a WeTransfer link to get the mixes on their, you could get the WAV files. Okay. But other than that, like, no, nothing's behind a paywall. And I don't want to do it that way for a bunch of reasons.
What's the main reason?
I have been happiest in my life when I had a paid job and did the things that mattered to me in a way where money was not involved. And that was complicated by having a staff job at the New Yorker where I was doing something I cared about and being paid. In some ways that made it more confusing in some ways. And so now I'm hoping to go back to and work in a rehab facility. I want things to be accessible, especially if I write about, like I just interviewed this amazing band called the Still House Plants.
Cool name.
They're fucking amazing, these young people in London. And anyway, like I don't want it to be hard for people to find that article. Like if I write about an artist, I want people to be able to find that piece and access it. And the internet is what it is. And it's really, really helpful, incredibly helpful when people pay. Like it made a huge difference in my year, but I just don't feel okay compelling them to do it. And I would much rather have somebody read for free for 2 years and then throw me some money. That's fine with me. I just feel really fucking weird putting it behind a paywall, because then it's like, okay, I'm not the New York Times or the New Yorker or something. Like I don't have that much to offer. Like it feels strange to ask somebody.
You should tell that to a lot of these young Substackers then.
I mean, I get it. We're all, a lot of us, my gross income last year was very not big. It helps when people pay for this thing, but I'm not at a place yet where I feel like, okay, I've got something, it's different. Like the band put out a record and we put an $11 price tag on it, but that was different for me. Like that was, it's almost an hour of music that
you spent a lot of money to make.
Or not, we didn't spend that much money, but like, we killed it. And like, you can't do that in your house without us. So like, you definitely owe us $11. Like that's easy. Like that's not hard for me. For instance, because of what happened with Deborah, like I haven't posted in a couple of weeks and I don't even know when I'm going to post next. And if I had like a Mr. Professional vibe about like subscriptions and I post on every Wednesday, I'd feel really weird about it. But I make a deal with you. Like I'm going to be my idiosyncratic self and you're going to figure out if you want to pay for it. But like, I sometimes am going to pause to catch my breath and figure out what I wanted to say. And that doesn't feel weird, but I would feel weird if I was pretending to be like Dr. Newsweek or whatever the fuck. Like, here's what's going on with platforms. What's going on with the earbuds. Like,
yeah, I think about that.
Platforms.
That's a common thing of like, once you turn on that paywall button, you can't turn that hose back off. You're forever indebted to the people that are paying you money, and you have to dance. And at that point, you could argue that is also going to be the fire under your ass that gives you a reason to write, which could turn out more output at the end of the day.
No, that's a really good point. There are moments when you get into a professional, like you're with a magazine or newspaper, and you can really enjoy that sort of daily kind of burn. You're like, oh, got a file. Like that can be. That can be really fun, but the nature of my life now is such that I knew that would not make sense for a Substack for me. And also, like, I don't want like a coherent, like, I don't want to have I don't want anyone to be expecting what comes next any more than when I wrote the column for the magazine for the New Yorker. Like, I didn't want anyone to be like, oh, I know what's coming this week. I always wanted it to be like the thing that a little bit undid the last one. So, if we did Dua Lipa, then we were going to do Scott Walker. If we were doing Basinski, the next thing was going to be Robin. Like I wanted them to sort of buttress each other so that they all seemed equally important, because that was my little Mr. Rogers mission. It was like, hey, just, it's all intense. It's all good. Like, please come out of your bunker. Like, it's going to be fine. You're not special if you like serious music, and you're not special if you like pop music. Like,
well, that sentence is kind of the distillation of Chris and my relationship as a whole, I would say.
What is your relationship is based on collapsing things?
Based on I'm not important or special for liking serious music, and he's not important or special for liking popular music.
Oh, so it's like the Statler and Waldorf vibe. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we come together on certain things, of course, but overall, I would say that's a fair assessment from Jason.
But for example, one thing that Chris would say is he would prefer the band Hole over the band Nirvana. What say you, Sasha?
Oh wow, that's an awful question.
Right.
I really don't want to have to choose one over the other. I feel like I'll be lying if I don't say Nirvana, but that makes it sound like I have something against Hole, which I don't.
It makes you sound sexist.
For pure listenability, I go back to Hole more than I go back to Nirvana. That's all I mean by that.
I go back to Nirvana much more than I go back to Hole.
Well, there you go. The decision made. We talked you out of it.
In fact, I was listening to Nirvana a couple of weeks ago because I just wrote about Odetta. And Odetta was a singer in the 50s and 60s. Well, she performed for a long time, but her big work was in the 50s and 60s. And she, maybe more than anyone, brought back the songs of Leadbelly, or really introduced them. She didn't bring them back. She introduced them into the mainstream, and she did a version of In the Pines. Not a really very good version of In the Pines, to be honest. She did other songs incredibly well. No, she did something weird with that song, but she was an incredible performer. So I was comparing Odetta and Kurt, and every time I go back to that Leadbelly thing, I'm just like astonished all over again.
Oh yeah,
it's just something else.
He put his foot in that one, didn't he?
He did, his entire foot.
Sasha, do you still ride your bicycle around town?
Oh hell yeah! I mean, it's a little chilly.
At what age do you think you're going to stop riding your bicycle? This is a personal question of mine.
I think the thing that will keep me from the grave is continuing to bicycle. I think a little bit too much about death nowadays, but definitely got to keep biking. Definitely got to keep biking.
That's good. I think that's also a very born and raised New Yorker attitude. I mean, that's the best way to get around.
It's awesome. It was. I mean, growing up, there was a lot of bike stealing, but in that part of the 70s and early 80s, like most of the time, you just got your bike back. Like it wasn't like kids were selling them on eBay and shit, or like,
Right, like a bully kid would borrow it.
Well, it was usually somebody you knew would take your bike, and you'd be like, you go to their mom and ask for it back, and yeah, because that was just kid stuff. But I guess now that I live in the East Village, I mean, in the 70s and 80s, this was crazy. No one would live here.
Are we neighbors? I'm on Avenue A. Where are you close?
What the heckin'? A and what?
What the? A and between 4th and 5th above Mass Books.
What the fuck? Dude, I thought you lived in LA or something.
Well, I mean, I'm in Atlanta right now, but my apartment is Avenue A between 4th and 5th.
Dude, I'm 7th and B.
Wow, truly neighbors. All right, we're gonna have to link up for a abrazo,
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother story.
I'll see you at Key Foods.
Don't do that, Jason.
Sasha, what do you think about Los Angeles? I'm looking for your Fran Lebowitz moment right now as a born and raised New Yorker.
I think Los Angeles is awesome.
Okay, next question. All
right, we're all set there. Thank you.
We got a clean take on that one. Okay, so sorry, go ahead. I was just joking.
Oh no, I think it's a very beautiful place. I think the light in LA is just amazing. But the answer is unfortunately incredibly boring. Like, I need the streets of New York City. They're like sort of the circuit board of my head. I need these streets to walk down to know what's going on. Having a culture where the street actually doesn't contain the mood of what's going on. It's not just the car stuff. Like, cause I like cars fine. I'm not like I don't have anything interesting to say about cars, but not having the street be a place where like a huge amount of thinking is happening in a social way was impossible for me. Like walking out and having the street not mean anything was too fucking strange for me. It was December of 2016, and that's actually when I connected with my partner who I now live with, and I landed the cab let me out over on 11th and 2nd, and they were selling Christmas trees, and I had no idea exactly what I was missing about New York, but when I saw the people on the streets and all this stuff happening, I was like, I just can't stay in LA anymore. I can't figure out.
You saw that rat run across the sidewalk and you said, I can't quit you, New York, you big stinky apple.
Thank you for saying rat. I have a life tip.
Please share.
All right. So we had mice, and bro, these mice, none of the traps did anything. The traps were like, this is my Fran Lebowitz moment.
These mice were dancing on top of the peanut butter, doing backflips, taunting.
Exactly. Literally running across those glue traps. Do you know what they don't? They absolutely cannot deal with, and they actually went away and they left us alone. Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap. They hate peppermint. They really.
Wow! Shout out to the doctor.
Yes, that
the
did it.
Doctor.
We just sprayed it on the stove and the counter, and after a week or two, they were like, "Fuck it." They still bounce around in the heating duct here, like in the little heaters. They run around and do like roller derby shit in there, but. As long as they stay away from the food, I don't mind. They can do that. I don't want to kill anyone, but
Yeah, my partner, we had a loose mouse in our house. We had a remodel going on, and it snuck into the crawl space, and we did some research and got some little like cotton balls, soaked them in peppermint oil, and placed them around the stove. And yeah,
Did
the
you?
same exact thing. Yeah. And it absolutely worked. And it also makes the house smell clean and fresh in a time where you need it the most, during a rat infestation.
exactly. Wait, so where are you now?
I'm in Los Angeles. I'm
Okay.
in Glendale specifically.
They do have rats in LA only if renovating, though, I believe. If you're installing a pool, all of a sudden the rats come out. I
didn't see any vermin of any kind the whole time I was there.
This is a COVID thing. My exterminator said that never in her career, 20 or 30 years of exterminating vermin, has she been this busy, because all the restaurants are closed, the dumpsters and grease traps of all the restaurants, but they're closed down, so they've had to take to the residential areas. But we killed the rat. Don't worry.
Do you know there's a word, the rat killing people have a word for where rats live?
What do they call it?
Like the nest?
They call it harborage.
Harborage.
I don't like that.
And so
That's too
in
serious for
lower
me.
Manhattan, where I've been for a long time, because
Sounds like a city in New Jersey.
I was down on Broadway and Walker with Deborah for about 15 years, and there are a bunch of restaurants down there and a lot of empty subway tunnels. So like, the restaurants would put out their bags at night, and it was on. Oh my Lord. Such rat.
If you're a rat, oh buddy, it was on.
Yeah, you knew where to go. When that brasserie closed, when that Circle Rouge, when that bistro shut down, you were like, I'm there.
When the bistro closed.
Oh hell yeah!
The original squatters of New York.
Yeah,
That's true. That's true.
I have so much respect for rats, but I really don't want to interact with them.
Wow.
You said it.
Well put.
I agree with that.
Sasha, thank you for joining us on How Long Gone. This was a special episode.
Oh, I forgot that we were on an episode of a thing.
We
just old pals catching
just
up.
Talking. Well, thank you so much for
old pals catching up. But honestly, thank you for joining us, and I'm glad that we were able to get you slotted in here.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for being open, and hopefully you were able to get some stuff out of that brain of yours that needed to come out.
Well, thank you so much. I'll send you also this the WAV file here.
Usually at the end, we'll just ask if you have any, thing that you want to plug, any new things coming out that you want to spread the word about.
Subscribe to the Substack, buy the Body Meta record, buy the Calvinist record. Be nice to everyone around you in Quar. If you need to hit a meeting, hit a meeting.
That's good to know. Thank you very much, Sasha. I just subscribed to the Subby today, and I will look up those lossless files.
The Subby. Covey.
Sasha.
Covey. All right, guys.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Later. No.
Did a full 180, crazy, thinking about the way I was.